All right, folks, we're just about to start here. We're going to do one last check. Does anybody have any empty seats next to them? I see 1, 2, 3. Great, fantastic. Yes, we'll bring all of you folk up here. So that was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Great. So here we have 1, 2, 3. We've got room for 3 more guests. All right. Thanks very much. We're full. It's mute. All right, thank you very much, everybody, for your cooperation in piling into this room. Welcome to the Doctor Who from Fanon to Canon panel. Just so you know, at the end of the panel, we will be doing a Q&A. I will be passing his microphone around so you don't have to shout. Now I am going to hand it over to our fabulous panelists.
Hi. Hello, everyone. Can you hear me? Yeah? All right. Thank you guys so much for coming. My name's Angie. This is Aiden.
Hello.
I'm not sure if you're aware, but there's a kind of whole academic stream going on here at Expo this year, where there's individual panels about people's research interests. And essentially, Aiden and I are really interested in Doctor Who, we're interested in fandom, we're interested in television. So we're here to kind of share to you some of our insights about this burgeoning area in pop culture studies. So yeah, thanks so much for coming, and we're looking forward to hearing what you have to say. So really what we're talking about today is what happens when fans become producers, right? And we're talking about Russell T Davies and Stephen Moffat specifically, which we'll get into. But I just kind of wanted to start by answering the question, what is fandom, right? I'm assuming most people in this room are fans of Doctor Who. Yeah? And it's great. I'm a fan as well. But if you think about the word fan, even the origins of the word fan kind of come from religious zealots, right? You think about the overly obsessed person, kind of closeted. And that conception has really changed over the last few years. And that has a lot to do with the digitization of content, how a lot of our lives are kind of through our phones, online, all of the practices like that. And really, in the literature now, when we talk about fans or fandom, we're talking about kind of how we consume culture, how we consume television specifically, right? If you think about it, a lot of people are going online, talking about what they liked about a particular program. They're on Twitter, they're on Facebook, and writing fan fiction, doing fan vids, artwork and that such. And really, those are activities that were traditionally associated with fans, right? If you think a couple of decades back. So, sorry, I'm just getting a little distracted by all the fun they're having next door. But really, when we're talking about fandom kind of now in the digital context, we're talking about regular modes of consumption, the things that we do every day that seem so mundane to us. Those are fan practices. So fandom is kind of emerging from the depths of people's basements and, the corners of their lives, and really becoming a commonplace thing that we can be proud of. I mean, all you need to do is look at this weekend, right? Look about how many people are here embracing their fandom and not shy about it, not closeted about it in any way, but that, we can all kind of share it and embrace in it. So today we're kind of investigating the implications of fandom, right? And really what we're talking about is this kind of direct connectivity that we have with the producers of the shows that we love and we watch, right? And of course this isn't something new, right? If we think about soap operas, or we think, about letter writing campaigns, things like that. There's always been that kind of connection between the consumer and producer. But what's changed now is that relationship is so much more immediate. And in fact, a lot of producers of these shows are monitoring fan activity or viewer activity, right? And we can see a lot of our theories, a lot of our complaints, a lot of our wishes somehow finding their way to the narrative. So that's kind of really what we're talking about today. It's a form of fan activism, right? This is this terminology that is quite prevalent in the literature as well. So this idea that fans, can be active, they have an active role in shaping the text that they love, right? So Doctor Who's our case study today, and that's kind of what we're laying out. And it's important to note with Doctor Who fandom specifically, what we're talking about today, this isn't a new phenomenon. So Aidan's going to kind of talk about the trajectory of Doctor Who fandom over the years. Oh, sorry, skipped a slide.
No problem. So, as Angie said, of course, we want to talk about fandom, and of course, with Doctor Who fans have kind of a special place within fandom. Of course, as we all know, the original run of the series was quite long, and running that long, of course, what happened was we saw fandom evolve with the fandom of the show itself. From the earthly children who greeted the show with wonder and awe in the early 1960s to the fans who stuck with the show through changes in production staff, from every single actor on the show who's ever been on the show being replaced, Doctor Who fans have always been on the vanguard of this evolution of fandom. From the terrible screen cap you can see here, of course, is from the movie that was released this past Christmas, An Adventure in Time and Space, which tries to capture that explosion that happened in the 1960s. And this is from a particular scene where the William Hartnell character is in a park with his wife and gets mobbed by all of these children and all these Doctor Who fans. The story, of course, is about this kind of curmudgeonly actor who finds in Doctor Who and in the fandom of Doctor Who a rejuvenation of not just his career, but also his interest in acting and his interest in fandom itself. But, as I said, this is not kind of where it ends. The evolution of fandom has gone through many phases. In the 70s, Doctor Who was one of the first shows to actually have appreciation societies with the Doctor Who Appreciation Society. Is there any members here of the Canadian version of the Doctor Who Appreciation Society? Any hands? No hands? I believe there was one. I'm not sure if it still exists. I would go look for it. If you can't find one, start one yourself. This was something that was a giant leap in fandom in the 1970s. The idea that we would get together and we would start to talk about television shows. We would discuss them. This is where things like fan fiction starts to really kind of boil and develop. In the 1980s, we saw the kind of convergence of both one of the most popular doctors and also the technology of video home recording. So bootleg copies of the show for the first time get circulated around amongst the fandom, where we could talk hours endlessly about what happened in this episode versus that episode, and what the Doctor means when he says this, or what his companions meant when they say that. And of course, Doctor Who also has the very kind of strange, if you will, period of time where it wasn't on television, where the fandom had to be that much more rabid, when all of a sudden being a fan of Doctor Who meant not just watching a TV show, it meant loving a TV show beyond when it was done being on TV. It meant wanting to read novels about it. It meant wanting to follow the magazine even after the show had left the air. It was a dedication to a TV show that didn't exist anymore. It was no longer there. Where we sit now, though, at fandom, fandom is at a crossroads. The picture on the right-hand side of the slide, your left, is of a book that represents this particular crossroads, where academics like Angie and I and many others, Paul Booth is the editor of this particular book, we grew up as fans of these TV shows, whether it be Doctor Who or many of the other shows that are represented here. So what we want to do, of course, is spend our academic time and our work time talking about the text that we love. This particular book, Fan Phenomena series with Doctor Who, is an interesting series that essentially Doctor Who belongs in the inaugural run of. It's a series that's about fans who became academics who want to look at every aspect of the show. The problem is, as academics, we don't get to publish nearly as quickly as all of you do, and that's kind of the interesting thing about where fandom has gone. The kind of insights, the analysis, the kind of discussion that you all produce on a regular basis through wikis and websites and Reddits and email chains and even in fan fiction, all of these things are coming out much faster than any of us can cope with. Unfortunately for academics, publishing is usually a years-long endeavor, and by the time the book comes out, of course, everything is gone. This book was, of course, supposed to come out for the 50th anniversary. I think it came out just about a month before, and of course, everything it said about the 50th anniversary and how special that was is kind of come and gone. So what makes it interesting is that we actually do have a term for this, and we have a way of describing this kind of activity, and I'll turn it back to Angie.
So what we're alluding to is this notion of collective intelligence. So if you think about it, if you think about fandom, it's not that, I'm a fan of something, you're a fan of something. To be a fan is not to an extent, it's not a personal experience. It's a collective one. It's a participatory one. If you think about, if you're a Doctor Who fan, how do you show your fandom, right? Is it that you buy like a TARDIS phone cover, for example, or I don't know, like bow ties are cool, kind of T-shirt, right? You want people to see that because you want to kind of find your brethren, right? Like that's what fandom is about. It's not this solitary thing, right? We skimmed past that lovely picture of that wonderful individual in his parents' basement, kind of in the shadows, and that's really not what fandom is about. Fandom is about what we're enacting today, right? It's talking about what we love and sharing that. So it's participatory. So this notion of collective intelligence, right, is this notion that no one person can know everything, right? Is that you know a little bit about something, I know a little bit about something, so together we know lots more than we did individually. And if you harness that power together, well then, then we get stuff like the TARDIS data core, right? Where this is this kind of database of information. If I watch an episode of Doctor Who and I don't quite get a reference, I immediately go online and can look it up, right? I can even add my own insights, right? So Wikipedia or wikis in general are an excellent example of collective intelligence because really it's this community, right? This community of fans that get together, that share their information, to this building encyclopedia as well. There's this trust that if there's certain information that we don't, that's not quite right or that needs editing, that another member will go in and fix it. So, what I'd like to talk about in terms of these artifacts of collective intelligence, right, these wikis, is this notion of canon, right? So the term canon kind of dates back to biblical times, right? With regard to literature. If you're thinking about canonical texts, you're talking about people who say, oh, well, these are the novels that you have to read if you're going to know what the canon of English literature is, you've got to read this. If you want to know what the best films are out there, these are the kind of canonical films that you watch, right? That's kind of where the term originated. But for our purposes today, when we talk about canon, what we're really talking about is a television text or a body of work that establishes its own internal storylines, right? What are the rules? What's the mythology of Doctor Who, right? That's what we talk about when we talk about canon. And much like, the people who decide, oh, these are the best books, or these are the canonical books, or these are the canonical films, when we talk about canon with regard to Doctor Who, who's responsible for deciding what's in canon, right? And that obviously goes to the kind of officiators of the show, the creators, the showrunners, right? Specifically. So it's known as this kind of expert community, or these kind of masters, if you call it, right? They guard the canon, and they have as we'll get into, they have the power to change canon, right? So that everybody else can kind of jump on it. Us as fans, or us as viewers, right, we can sit at length, and I'm sure if any of you have been online, know, we can sit and debate canon at length, right? So that's kind of what we're exploring today. Can individuals, fans, end up changing canon, right? Or does it lie in the hands of the actual showrunners? So canon is essentially an abstraction because it can be changed. It can be changed from one showrunner to another, right? If we think about Doctor Who, way back in its initial run and how it's changed in kind of its reboot, we know that canon can change. And that's kind of what we're looking at today, which segues nicely into this notion of fanon.
Hey, before I ask the question, what is Fanon, does anybody know the first time the word canon was used in a popular literature? It is also a Stephen Moffat television production for BBC. Anyone? You can just shout it out, sir. Sherlock Holmes. It's the first time canon was used to describe, someone else had the same answer. It was the first time it was used in literature to describe what was and wasn't. And what was the dividing line for Sherlock? Anything that Sir Arthur Conan Doyle wrote was canon. Anything that anybody else wrote wasn't. So it was very clear cut back then. It was easy to kind of determine. With Doctor Who, of course, it is far less easy to determine what is canon and what isn't. So if we know what canon is, and again, feel free to just shout it out in an incomprehensible way all at once, what do you think Fanon is?
What the fans decide is a fact.
What the fans decide is fact. I also heard fan fiction.
Anyone else?
An interpretation of the events of the show, yeah?
Absolutely.
Not canon.
Definitely needs to be added to the definition.
I imagine Fanon would be something where the fans got together and made something happen in canon.
Okay, so something that happens in the fan world and ends up seeping into canon?
Yes.
Excellent. And I think these are all really good suggestions because honestly, I think the line is very unclear. As Angie had pointed out, this notion of canon is kind of bifurcated. On the one half, canon is those things that are authoritative. So in Doctor Who, of course, we know that the TV show is the authoritative text. If it happens on TV, on the BBC, in the Doctor Who TV show, then it's part of canon. If it doesn't, maybe it's not. And this is where Doctor Who gets really kind of interesting. So, the Sarah Jane Adventures, is that canon?
How many people say yes? Hands?
How many people say no?
It's okay.
I as well. Torchwood, is that canon for Doctor Who? How many people say no? And see, this is the discussion that we're so interested in today, because what happens is that, like I said, canon is this demarcation of authority. It's this demarcation of what is true, what isn't true about this fictional world. On the same time, or at the same time, canon as well as Fanon is that discussion. It's what we discuss as being true and what we discuss as being not. So I'll start with just a quick example from the original run of Doctor Who. And this particular piece of Fanon comes from the TARDIS Wiki, which is a fan-produced wiki. I'm sure most of you have probably seen it already. And it's about whether or not the Doctor can have romantic feelings. Now, we'll play, of course, the clip.
Very interesting. I was rather under the impression that Mr. Duggan was following me.
Oh, well, you're a beautiful woman, probably, and...
And that's it. That's all. The Doctor doesn't say, no, I can't have feelings for human people. No, I can't feel romantic feelings for anyone. No, he just says, you're a beautiful woman, probably. And that was enough for fans to discuss whether or not the Doctor could actually have romantic feelings for a woman or romantic feelings for anyone in any real way or any human way. And of course, as we've seen as the show has progressed with the 2005 reboot, what ends up happening is that we get kind of definitive within the canon now evidence that no, the Doctor can sort of have romantic feelings. The best example obviously being Rose and the Doctor, although I have a totally different interpretation of that, so we can talk afterwards. But what comes of all of this kind of discussion? What comes from these types of things? And one example is the discontinuity guide. Does anybody here own it? Excellent. Do you want to tell us what it is? No, I'm just kidding. So the Discontinuity Guide by Paul Cornell, Martin Day, and Keith Topping is an episode-by-episode analysis of the original run of the show. They actually look at elements of every single episode. They talk about, the goofs, the gaffes, all of the sorts of things that happen from episode to episode. And this is the type of conversation that's happening almost every day on the internet right now about Doctor Who. What makes this particular piece interesting is one of its lead authors, Paul Cornell, is himself a fan of Doctor Who. He was a fan his whole life, wrote his first fan fiction in The Queen Bat. Anybody read The Queen Bat before? This is a Doctor Who fan fiction zine, however that's pronounced. And in the hinterland years, when Doctor Who was no longer a TV show, Cornell got to write a novel for the Virgin New Adventure series, which was called Human Nature. And of course, we all remember that in the third season of the rebooted show, that particular novel actually did get turned into a two-parter, Human Nature and the Family of Blood. Probably one of the better ones, in my opinion, in the Tennant era, but it's just my humble opinion. But we can see how fans can, just from their passion of writing fan fiction and being involved in the show and being involved in these discussions, can take that passion, take that energy, and start to funnel it and transform it into something that is, for Mr. Cornell, of course, a career. He's now, a TV writer. He writes scripts, obviously for television, writes books, and has been able to turn his fandom into something that he gets to do for the rest of his life.
So, of course, the big elephant in the room, right, who we're kind of dancing around is Russell T Davies, right? The kind of, I don't want to use two big words, but Uber fan who ends up, being the showrunner and bringing Doctor Who to an entirely new generation, right? And Davies is the gatekeeper. He's the one who brought Cornell in. So he actually started, we couldn't actually find a source for this, but we know that he's a longtime fan, and we likely, he likely wrote, maybe somebody in the room can help us, he likely wrote fan fiction, right? But he did write for the kind of novelization for Doctor Who, and then eventually, he's got quite a career in television, and that definitely contributed to him being the first showrunner. But essentially, he's the gatekeeper, right? So now we have an instance of a fan actually becoming one of these elites, right? One of these people who is deciding what canon is. So Davies is the one who ushered in Cornell, and of course, another person that we're dancing around is Moffat, right? Moffat was also a fan. So we have a little clip here of Moffat discussing his notion of canon.
Would you ever consider revisiting earlier stories and updating them?
Doing them again?
Yeah, updating.
No, because then, it happened to the Doctor twice, and my own sense of canon would go to pieces. I would say, well, how wouldn't he know he'd done all this before? Aren't we repetitive enough for you? No, I wouldn't. I like to think of all the Doctor Who story as one big story, and he shouldn't do the same story twice.
So Moffat is saying, no, I'm not gonna. The question was, would you ever, reboot or rewrite previous stories from the previous Doctor Who into its current run? And he said no, because I see it as one long story, and that's his conception of canon, right? So now I'm gonna call back to a question that I asked earlier: is can fans change canon, right? Moffat's a great example. This is something we can discuss later. He was a fan, now he's a showrunner. How does that play into this notion of fanon versus canon, right? Now that we have Moffat deciding what canon is. And here's another example. This regeneration limit, right?
From the original series, how many regenerations does a Time Lord get?
13.
What about the Master?
13.
What about, oh no, I've lost her name. The Ranai. What about his companion in that clip that we just saw, who could regenerate at will when she wanted a new face? Good question, good point. But, as Angie's explaining.
Right, there's this notion that, what is it? I'm already confused. 12 or 13, right? Regenerations. 12? 13? 13, right? So
12 regenerations, 13 versions.
Right. It's very confusing, right? And then we get the time of the Doctor, right? The Christmas special 2013. What does Moffat decide to do? Let's watch this little clip and discuss.
Ha! Everyone gets stuck somewhere eventually, Clara. Everything ends.
Except you.
If you've been paying attention. I'm an old man now.
But you don't die. You change. You pop right back up with a new face.
No, not forever. I can change 12 times, 13 versions of me, 13 silly doctors.
Okay, so you're number 11, so...
Ha, are we forgetting Captain Grumpy? Huh? I didn't call myself the Doctor during the Time War, but it was still a regeneration.
Okay, so you're number 12.
Well, number 10 once regenerated and kept the same face. I had vanity issues at the time. 12 regenerations, Clara. I can't ever do it again. This is where I end up. This face. This version of me.
So imagine you've just finished watching the 50th anniversary special, or even let's go further. Let's go back to the season finale from the previous season where we find John Hurt as the Doctor. Spoiler alert. And all of a sudden, fans are thrown into an unbelievable tempest in a teapot. Well, if John Hurt's one of the Doctors, what does that mean? Does that mean that Matt Smith is actually number 12? Is he not 11? What number is John Smith? John Hurt. Where's the War Doctor fit? How does he fit into the regenerations? How many regenerations have there been? What about the Metacrisis? Is that a regeneration? Does it count? And here is Moffat actually talking back to the fans and saying, no, I hear all of the things that you're saying. I hear all of the discussions that you're having because you know what, I'm having them too. And he often positions himself in many of his interviews as being, of course, the uber fan, the person who's been a fan of the show his whole life and is just delighted as heck to actually be writing it these days. But I will say this as a cautionary note, watch out following Moffat. He likes to wind you up.
He's admitted as much, right? I think with the Paul McGann webisode, he was kind of like, no, he's not involved in any way, That comes out, and then after he's like, wasn't that lovely? Weren't you guys surprised? Isn't that what you want, right? So he fully admits playing with us, right? So, I mean, what is it? The Doctor lies.
Rule number 1, Moffat lies.
Yeah, there you go. So another example that we kind of pulled is this fan-made video, right? Fan quote, I'm using air quotes, right? Fan-made video, 5-ish Doctors reboot. How many people have seen this? Oh, okay.
Oh,
so
the rest of you go watch it.
Go watch it. Essentially, it's a little web video created by one of the Doctors, Peter Davidson, right? Who was the 6th Doctor, right?
Doctor.
And essentially, you know, it's a humorous take on the Doctors that weren't invited, for lack of a better word, to appear in the 50th, right? And it stars Davidson, Baker, and Sylvester McCoy, and they kind of go on this plight to try to get into the 50th anniversary, no matter, come hell or high water. So I'm just going to show a clip. Now, it's interesting I bring this clip up because, Peter Davidson, Sylvester McCoy, Colin Baker, they were part of that elite. They were part of those people who were deciding what was canon because they were on the show previously. But now the tables have turned, and now they're creating this kind of fan video, right? So let's just take a look at this. This spoiler alert for those who haven't seen it. Yeah, this is the clip like right from the very end of the little webisode.
Okay, so up next is the under gallery scene.
That scene's definitely in, but I think we're going to have to look at all the footage.
All the footage right from the top. Okay.
I'd better take this.
Okay, there is not enough of the stone dust. I wanted it covered from here all the way back to here. Okay, there is not enough. Oh, Zygons, right. Okay, you should be in costume, but probably doesn't matter for this shot. Can you get shrouds for the Zygons, please? And then if you guys can just quickly as you can, yeah? Get the hat off!
How's it looking?
Perfect. Couldn't be better. So, here's take 1.
Welcome to the undergallery. This is where Elizabeth I kept all art deemed too dangerous for public consumption.
Stone dust.
Is it important?
1200 years I've never stepped in anything that wasn't.
What can you tell?
From what?
The taste.
Oh, nothing. I'm just a bit peckish.
So here lies the question, right?
Who's under the sheet?
Who's under the sheets, and is it canon, right? Has it worked its way into canon? Who's under their sheets, right? Who are these Zygons? So that's kind of where we're leaving it. We'd like to open the rest of the time to discussion to hear kind of what you have to say in this kind of debate. Where's Patrick? Patrick will come with the mic. Yeah, what do you think of this debate between Fanon and Canon?
Awesome.
Yay, it's a bow-tied person.
I'm going to be really controversial right now and say I don't think there really is any Doctor Who canon. I think it's all Fanon from the very beginning. Everyone said, well, this is the premise, but then everyone's added their own ideas. So there really is no real dedicated canon. It's all Fanon. I mean, there are some, like I said, some set in stone things. The Doctor will regenerate. There will be, the Daleks and the Cybermen and things, but everything else is very much, to put it simply, wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey stuff.
Yeah, but where do you draw that line? Because you said there are definite things that are set in stone.
Well, if you look over the past 50 years, things have recurred. Like the regenerations have always happened, the Daleks have always showed up, the Cybermen have always showed up. These long-standing icons, I think, have become set-in-stone rules, maybe even canon, but everything else has been very much in flux and flow. There's always been very different villains, there's always been different companions. I mean, that is another set-in-stone thing. The Doctor will always have a companion. But I think that just rules more than actual canon, really.
It's definitely an interesting point. I remember I am actually a latecomer to the show. I've gone back and I've rewatched all of the 2005 era and all of Hartnell. And if you haven't seen Hartnell, I recommend it strongly. It was a brilliant show in the 60s and still holds up. But I jumped on with Matt Smith. And I remember Space, before it came on, had this nice little 1 hour special, What You Need to Know About Doctor Who. He's got a flying police box. He has a sonic screwdriver. He brings people along with him. That was a full hour. I swear, it was a full hour on Space. Those three things are all they covered. Those are the only things. Oh, and the regeneration. He changes from time to time. Then they spent a whole 15, 20 minutes on the villains that were coming up in that first season. So it is the type of thing, and it's the paradox of canon, is that canon is a fan activity. Defining what is canon becomes a fan obsession. It becomes something that fans do and that writers will often freely ignore.
Anybody? Right close to your mouth.
First, I'd like to point out that the Doctor did not always have the sonic screwdriver. Just putting that out there.
That's a very good point. Hartnell had no screwdriver.
Second of all, I'd like to point out an instance where Fanon did actually become canon. Anybody here familiar with the Big Finish Productions Doctor Who audio adventures? A few people, good. Well, that started off originally back in the late 80s as a sort of fan, a group of fans got together and then they made, Doctor Who audios and they sold them all very illegal, but they were so good that the BBC just let them do it. And eventually they got together and they got some actual money and they went to the BBC and they got a license. And then, so many audios later, during that Paul McGann webisode, he actually name-checked some of the companions that he had in the audios. So that was actually Fanon that became official. So just wanted to point that out.
Nice, that's an excellent example.
So I was just kind of curious where you guys count non-BBC licensed things, like the Peter Cushing Doctor who did the 2 films?
That's an awesome question. I think that generally it gets discounted as being not canon. But I would, again, because this is about fans deciding, how many people here have seen, first of all, the Peter Cushing Doctor Who movies? The Ghostbuster and 8 other people. So how many people would consider them canon? And then follow-on question, of course, what does that do with the numbering of the Doctor?
Well, there was also that Moffat had written a little comedy clip starring Rowan Atkinson as the Doctor, and then he goes through multiple regenerations in the actual, I don't know, I think it's like 20 minutes. But Hugh Grant actually plays the Doctor, and I think Russell T. Davies was on record saying that he thinks Hugh Grant is his favorite Doctor. So,
Yeah, I think it happens every year, actually. They do, it's part of a series for it's a fundraising thing, and the Doctor's there every year. In fact, I think it was just this past year that they showed him in the new, before Jenna Coleman was part of the show, that was their big video for the time spot on that fundraiser, was introducing the new companion and Matt Smith together. But is that canon?
Hello.
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 So I've been percolating this question in my mind, and it's a bit scholarly. I quite like that kind of stuff, and please bear with me. I'm going to try not to be quite too blabbery, but so the passion that comes from these fandoms, debating, whether that's not true or that's not a canon as it is. It reminds me of, the debates that. Well, I mean, still, but not nearly as much. We used to go on about like religion, because when our Western societies used to be dominated by these religions, these kinds of things were going on about, like what is the truth? It was a real fanatical thing built into our societies of just craving to know what is the authoritative, text, as it were, or canon, as it were. And since a lot of our society, in my opinion, thankfully, has gotten rid of those faiths for the most part. Since something like Doctor Who like this, which doesn't really have like a one writer that you can definitely like say was like Tolkien, Tolkien obviously wrote The Lord of the Rings, and so you can say that is what Tolkien wrote, but with something like Doctor Who that has so many different writers and so many different handovers, like, do you think, this is going to sound a bit kind of ridiculous maybe, but do you think Doctor Who like these kinds of fandoms are sort of taking the place of that need in our society, this kind of that we've been built to find the truth of something? And I hope this doesn't sound too crazy, but like, do you think it's kind of trying to, it's like a replacement for what our used to be theological societies used to have, and this is sort of like, this is where like that urge to say like, this is the canon, and others saying, no, you're wrong, or saying, no, Peter Cushing movies have absolutely nothing to do with the actual thing. Those are just there for the fun of it, they just made it for that particular reason, for the executives did, Does this make any sense?
No, it does, absolutely. And I think it's an interesting question. I think it speaks to, so in the social sciences, which Angie and I are both in, we're constantly struggling with one fundamental question is what makes us different? As a species on this planet, what makes us different? And we've had lots of different answers over lots of different years. Communication used to be one of them, that we communicate, and then we found out that bees did dances to tell other bees where pollen was. And there was one guy in about the mid-'80s who come up with this idea that we're storytelling animals. That's what makes us different, is that we tell stories. We tell them to one another, we recount them, we follow them. And I think that what your question speaks to is that notion that we are storytelling animals, and that, these stories end up being important to us. And Doctor Who is a great example. I think in a panel that happened just after they had wrapped the 50th anniversary, Moffat was talking about, how the world always needs a hero like the Doctor. Instead of a gun, he has a screwdriver. And instead of, green scaly things or superpowers, he has two hearts. It's the type of hero that, speaks to, I think, a lot of us, in that, he really is, to me at least, the embodiment of inspiration in most of his stories, because most of the Doctor Who stories are about the companions reaching and pushing themselves further than they've ever thought they could, because he needs them to, because he inspires them to. What do you think?
Yeah, just to kind of bring your question to kind of, my area of interest is kind of looking at complex narratives, like television narratives, and how, because television has changed, the content has changed. Like transmission of television, if you think about how we watch television, it's no longer, in front of a big box, we're watching it on our smartphones and via Netflix and all that. So how has the content changed? And I kind of argue, well, it's gotten more complex. And if you think about Doctor Who, and especially under the Moffat era, it's definitely gotten more complex, to the point where it's almost like I can't watch an episode without pausing it and, consulting the wiki because I have no idea what's going on, right? And, I think that the internet and, digitization of content, access, right? Now that we can all kind of go online and find that community, as I was saying in the beginning, that's something that, is very much ingrained in the television experience, right? Especially with shows as complex as Doctor Who. Like, you want to talk about it with somebody because there's so much to talk about. And, another Moffat series, Sherlock, right? He embeds that right in the narrative when we all, again, spoiler alert, find out or not find out how Sherlock died, right? There's all these kind of fan theories. There's this desire to analyze, to take something apart, and now all of that can be documented online and instantaneous. If I'm watching Christopher Eccleston, right? If I'm just starting Doctor Who, I can get online and I can find a group of people who are right there with me, right? And we're talking about the same things that answer questions that may have been answered already. I can access those kinds of theories and those kind of discussions, right? Because of this thing called the internet, right? So I think that there's always this desire, as Aidan was saying, like, for us to communicate and for us to find, and especially when we're talking about fans, as I said, it's not the solitary activity, it's participatory, it's communal. So a roundabout way to answer your question, I think that the show itself is promoting that, right? And a lot of complex narratives on television do that. If you think about Lost, right? The two creators even said, like, we created this show with all these gaps because we wanted a community to build, to flourish and discuss all of these mysteries and, eventually tear their hair out and quit watching the show. But, with a show like Doctor Who, it's a testament, right? That it has lasted this long and that we can kind of go back, keep going forward and conjecture and really relish in that. I don't see it stopping anytime soon.
First hand I saw and right here.
Hello. Fascinating parallel with the religious that like that question. Most of the time books aren't considered part of canon, I realize, but has anybody heard of this crossover comic that they had? Cybermen on the board? Well, really wanted to read that. Anyway, what do you guys think? Canon? Crossover?
What about Hulock?
I was thinking it would be even better if the Daleks joined the Borg.
Right.
Apparently at 5-minute warning.
Yeah. So we're getting the 5-minute warning. So we just kind of want to conclude by saying, this is the kind of stuff that we do, that we love, right? And that it's important. At the end of the day, your fandom is important. It's important, if you think about the things that you do in your personal time, the time that is yours, right? The time that you get to decide what you're going to do. And if it's watching Doctor Who, if it's coming to Expo, if it's discussing it, that's significant because ultimately the actions that we do in our pleasure time, right, affect everything else in our lives. It defines us as citizens. So what we're here today to talk about something as frivolous as Fanon or Canon. At the end of the day, it does have cultural weight, right? Because it's what's popular, it's what a lot of people are doing, and it begs investigation. So, thank you all for coming. We're around. Feel free to give us a shout.
One quick shameless plug. Come again tomorrow, Palomino E, to see Angie talk about The Walking Dead, and come see me Sunday. I'll be talking about video game fans.
Also, one other shameless plug. We do have surveys at the back of the room about this panel here, which will not only help out these fine folk, but it will also enter you into a prize draw. So please see the lovely young lady at the back with the papers and the pens. Thank you very much.
So you're at Palomino E now?
I'm gonna have to write. I have to do paper.
You did it already. It's all questions.
No, I can't do that now.
Oh, why? Because you can just sit on a big stage thing? It totally works. Not yet.
Not yet, but soon,
Not
right?
yet, yeah. But hopefully traveling New Orleans.
Hi. Yeah.
Yep. I think it's an awesome question.
Well, I asked Aiden, like, what about deleted scenes on DVDs, right?
I'm
Like,
nope.
do they count? And he
Not
said
it.
no, and I think yes, because
Nope.
Right?
Webisodes, I don't know. I am on the fence.
Minnesota are so hard to place because,
Mm-hmm.
you know, especially that one, yes, it's still actually.
yeah. Yeah. So it's an interesting question. I mean, but we're kind of positing that canon is this abstract notion, right? And it's nebulous. It never changes. It's never solid. It always changes. So it's a good question. I don't have an answer. I think I think it's part of kind of.
I think since 2005 for sure.
Yeah, I think it
Yeah.
has its place.
Especially
in
after
canon,
Night of
right?
the Doctor, it's.
Yeah.
I think that kind of they would have to be canon in that regard. But deleted scenes are not. They're still not.
I think they are.
Totally deleted. But not canon.
Yeah, thanks. Should we like go down or?
That's very possible.
Hi.
What's your interpretation of Rose and the Doctor?
I think that he wasn't going to tell her that he loves her because he can't. I actually do. I'm one of those fans that believes
No.
the Fanon that he can't have those types of romantic feelings. I think he likes us all the same.
Take your black heart
because
and
again, I think that the Doctor I chalk it up to the scene when he finds out who River Song is, and all of a sudden he's like, "Oh, look, how do I look?" And I think that the reason he said that is because he realized at that moment that she could see him in a way that only Time Lords can see one another. They're, fourth dimensional beings that see through time and space. They see everything that can or will happen. So I don't think, again, I think we don't look like Rose doesn't look like Billy Piper to David Tennant or even to Chris Eccleston. He looks, she looks like a big ball of potential. Things that could happen, things that will happen, and whether or not he knew she would get stuck in that universe. Hello.
Very interesting panel.
Thanks.
I just want to make the point that I'm going to get to that. This guy was up for debate for a long time.
Absolutely.
Thinking about him, whether he was canon.
Yep.
Human nature.
Absolutely. And forgot to mention it, but what also made him controversial is that this whole romantic feeling thing. He kisses the lead twice, and it's like, whoa, wait a minute, the Doctor doesn't do that.
Well, not to mention the movie was coming.
Yeah.
Still a fantastic Doctor. So I'm glad at least to have him back. What's your deal on his?
I thought it was cool because it was out there on the internet for so long that Paul McGann was doing costume things. There was all these pictures of him, and then when it actually he actually got to be part of the kind of canon, we saw him change. I thought that was a really neat moment. I like Doctor Who for those types of things that I have to go back and actually look up or oh, okay, well, where is that? And oh, that looks really cool, and then finding out kind of what's behind those stories is I think what keeps me interested in the show to this day.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah,
Cool.
no worries.
Hey, right now.
Thanks.
How important, or I don't know, why do you think it's important that people have their own validated?